Welcome back. In our last session, I hit you with a lot of information about learning how to learn. This will help you in your overall life, as well as with your performance areas. Whether you're a thinker or a feeler, once you are aware of your own unique styles, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and understanding how your brain works in learning, you can better then retain the information. Efficiency going in means efficiency going out. The more you can be aware and apply your own unique learning style, the better off you'll be. This implies that there has to be time to practice these things, to rehearse these things. Something done just one time will not allow it to. I heard all old research says that for every new bit of information, it takes up to 21 practices or exposures or repetitions of it before it becomes ingrained, before it becomes second nature to you. Some of the more recent research I've seen, it says it may take up to 60 specific and planned purposeful practices, coming up with the magical number of the 66th time before it becomes ingrained within you. Just because something makes sense to you, or you do it once or prove it to yourself just once, does not mean it's automatically going to occur. You have to practice it, you have to refine it, and allow it to integrate. I've come up with 4 basic levels of programming your mind to achieve something. Each is built upon the other. Let's see if you can follow me here. The basic level is what's called unconscious incompetence. No. Unconscious incompetence. That's where you do things poorly and you have no idea what you're not doing. Everybody starts at that level through some practices, through some tutorials, through some good coaching or teachers. You will come to the point where you, over a period of days or weeks, you will reach the next level called conscious incompetence. It's a huge leap between the no-brainer mistakes of unconscious incompetence to the next level of conscious incompetence. At this level, you're still not doing things too well, and at least you're aware of the mistakes you're making. At least you're aware of catching some kind of glimpse of maybe what you should be doing. Over the period of days or weeks or months, through many repetitions of it, you will reach the third level called conscious competence. That means you can start doing some semblances of the task or the skill, and it takes a lot of concentration because you're paying attention to so many things, and you will catch some glimpses of that you can become consciously competent. You can do it at a base level, and it takes so much energy. Over the period of days and weeks and months and even years of purposeful practice and rehearsals, you will come to the point where you become unconsciously competent, where it becomes so well ingrained within you, you just naturally do it. All the practices from the hippocampus to the specific motor neurons connecting with other synapses have reverberated, so the synapses become stronger and heavier, that it becomes more ingrained within you. You will know when you reach an unconscious competent level, when you just naturally do something and then someone asks you, well, how do you do that? And you have to step back and say, how do I do that? You've been doing it so long, it is so well integrated that it's second nature to you, as it should be. That's the ultimate goal. So it's so well unified, there can be this natural outflowing of integrated skills. Talking about skills, I love words, and the word form means structure. And I came upon the cyclical spiraling process of learning how to use the different forms in what you do. Over here is where we inform, where there's the input of information. A lot of times very sporadic or chunked information. Through more practices, you go through some short-term memory where it starts connecting. Then we come through the next level of form called reformulating it, where you start changing around some things so it's more acceptable to the things you already know. Then it starts making those connections into long-term memory. The more you practice something, you start to learn how to transform so that you're able to transfer into the actual performance. Sometimes you may have to start from scratch again when you're reworking something physical or mechanical where you deform it. And so that you go back to the basic informing stage. Hopefully that makes some sense. I used to chuckle when a coach or most often pushy parents would contact me and say, could you bring my daughter, my son to the next level? As if there's different kinds of levels, which there are, but they want to push their kids into it. And a lot of times, if the kids aren't actively involved or committed, no level of pushing is going to help them reach the next level. Just as you're responsible for your own learning, you're also responsible for your own performing. You may enlist people, aides, teachers, coaches, parents, mentors. You are still responsible for that. The more I thought about how do you reach the next level, because there are levels, then I came up with a 10-step process about it. Don't get blown away with all of these. Let me just describe it. Starting from the base level, you have to dream about something is possible. And convince yourself improvement is possible and even attainable. Sometimes all it needs is you giving yourself permission to give it a full shot, to commit yourself to this process, and then believe that you can. Along the way, you may have to confront your own fears. Remember the video 2 videos ago where we talked about the 3 questions you need to ask yourself to overcome your fears. Sometimes you have to confront your fears before you can convince yourself you're worthy and deserving of improvement, and it is possible to achieve. Essential is the second element, is solidify the skills and the performance levels you have at your current level. Yes, I know you may not be satisfied or happy with them, but they provide the foundation on which you can build the new ones. And it takes time to solidify those skills to make sure that they come out in a fairly consistent level. B level performances, B plus level performances. So solidify that. You can't keep on reaching so much without that foundation. As you solidify that foundation, define and isolate all the specific features and dynamics and even nuances you need to change or improve. So you start developing your own roadmap, your own game plan for that. Then start working. Remember our old friend from last time? The whole parts, whole learning. Each practice session, each rehearsal session should be defined before you go into it, or certainly while you're stretching or warming up beforehand. What do I want to achieve in this rehearsal session? What are the usually 3 steps, 3 parts that I need to emphasize, and working on each of those. And then very importantly, at the end, make sure you spend the last 15 to 18% of every rehearsal session solidifying those, integrating those, seeing if they can make some kind of connections with those. So follow and rely on the whole parts whole for each purposeful practice session. Make sure you always forge ahead. Learn when to work hard versus when to ease off. Trying harder, pushing harder, seeking to force or produce something is unnatural and it doesn't work. Learn how to ease off, especially at the end of a practice session. There are times to apply yourself into the specific chunks you're working on. Concentrate, pay attention, be aware of those, and then learn how to ease off. There may be some rehearsal sessions that you put the performances together, not working on anything new. And that's part of the frustrating and emboldening elements of continuous improvement, is that you start putting all these together and you can say, wow, I can perform it in a little practice session or for a limited amount of time, and then I can build upon those. What will happen is after you start putting these things together and you seeing them connect in a more integrated way, you will start catching glimpses of the next level. You might have surprised yourself saying, wow, look what happened there. Or that's what I dreamed of. It was only a short period of time, or I haven't achieved it, but I saw it was possible. This process of catching a glimpse to the next level is reinforcing that you're on the right track, that things are connecting. Sometimes what happens after you catch a glimpse of that you're able to do it, you're able to do it in an integrated way of this next level, you will become frustrated. You will say, how come I can't do that all the time? And you're tempted to push harder and try harder. And as you know, that's the worst thing you can do. Trust your patience. Trust that you're on the right course. By catching a glimpse, you know you're on the right course. As we come along, start integrating your mind and body and emotions and even your spirit. Let them all start connecting together, trusting and that you're on the right track and even enjoying what you're able to achieve so far. Okay. Get this notion of expectations out of your mind at this point. Is that trusting that you're on the right track and giving yourself permission to allow these skills that you've worked on over the period of days or weeks are starting indeed to come together. Remember, it may be at least 60 practices or repetitions before it starts becoming at the unconscious competent level. Certainly, sometimes it will happen that you will leap onto that next level when you're least expecting it, when you've had a good night's sleep, when you had taken a couple days off, and then you came back and said, whoa, that all happened again. Good. Repeat it, do it again, and then solidify it for the next level. You can reach additional levels if you know the general blueprint of how to do that. I paused here because I want to make sure I have all my facts right, because one of the greatest myths in human performance right now over about the last 7 or 8 years was a bastardization of Professor Anders Ericsson's study he did on elite violinists. This came across in his recent book called Peak, which it's a mistitled one. I'm sure some junior editor told him that it would be a better title. How many of you have heard of the 10,000 hour rule? Yeah, that sounds overwhelming and daunting. Some of you might not have ever heard that before, but Anders Ericsson in the 1980s with his colleagues Rolf Krumke and Clemens Tekroner did some research at a Berlin music conservatory on young violinists, and they followed them for up to 10 years and started finding out that there was distinctions of why the elite ones became elite, the very good ones just stayed very good, and the third group of this became music teachers. Now, if you've ever done any kind of research or studied research, you knew his initial research findings were only based on a group of 30 into 3 subgroups of 10 each. That is not statistically valid. The problem happened when a popular author by the name of Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers used Ericsson's research to extrapolate it. It was clear that Mr. Gladwell did not read the research and starting putting things together in different ways. Gladwell had heard that the Beatles, before they became very popular, were in Hamburg, Germany for 2 consecutive summers doing 5 or 6 concerts a day, 7 days a week. And through this repetition, they became very good. And that's where this notion of the 10,000 hours came from, is that if you keep on doing things over and over and over and over and over again, you'll become good. Well, if you're mindlessly doing it, that's starting to get drawn into the blind alley of this muscle memory garbage. But there is some relevance to the notion of doing purposeful practice over and over again. One thing that Gladwell never did look at, actually 2 things they never did look at from the research Dr. Erickson did, was that the top elite violinists had short practice sessions, only up to about an hour and a half. They might have done 2 a day instead of doing one big mega session. Hour and a half is more than enough time to work on your 3 chunks and integrate those. And the second thing that Dr. Erickson found out, that the elite violinists slept more than their contemporaries, up to an hour a day. So that some of them would have a rehearsal session early in the morning, then go out for a walk, take a nap, eat something, and then come back and do another practice session in the afternoon or early evening and sleep well, sleeping at least an hour longer than their contemporaries. As you remember from the last video, is this during this deep sleep that the hippocampus is actively engaged, reverberating with those specific motor neurons that has been working on. And this reverberating during deep sleep is where the memorizing, the long-term memory, the connections of that skill evolve. Get out of this myth of trying harder, pushing harder. There is a time to do that during a specific chunk for a limited amount of time, but give yourself a chance to relax. Remember, we talked about cramming for an examination, how that didn't work, or pulling an all-nighter, that didn't work. Those are the 2 things you need to do just the opposite. Have shorter rehearsal sessions, up to an hour and a half at the maximum. Enjoying those, spending time following your plan, and then spending time relaxing, even sleeping from that. These notions that Erickson came up with came into the notion he called learning how to practice deliberately, what I call purposeful practice. He mentioned this. He said that deliberate practice was engaging with full concentration on the special activity to improve performance, with full concentration. He said deliberate practice is focused, structured, and offered clear goals and feedback how you're doing. It requires paying attention, one of our concentration tools, and what you are doing, and observing how you can improve. You're actively engaged in each one. Don't be one of these dumb jocks that their coaches used to send them to me, and they would say, "Coach told me to." No, you're responsible for the quality of your practices, what I call purposeful practice. Nothing feels as neat as being well practiced, well rehearsed. You have the foundation, as well as you have a sharp edge in what you're doing. And that comes from doing things smartly. Up to an hour and a half session, maximum. Once a day, maybe twice a day, giving yourself plenty of time to relax between that. There's a wonderful quote from John Fitzsimmons Mahoney's 1999 book called The Tao, the T-A-O, The Tao of the Jump Shot. And he had a whole mental book on playing basketball better, the ultimate shot being the jump shot. Here's what he said about relaying practice to the jump shot. He said, true practice or performance is not a dulling habit repeated over and over again. It is practicing the jump shot. One works continuously on the qualitative perfection and consistency of form, just as a classical pianist or dancer does. However, the athlete as artist realizes that yesterday is not today. His or her energy and attention are free of thought forms that create the divisions of time. This attention is total in the dimensionless present. Each jump shot is renewed, not repeated. Remember, every performance you give is separate and unique unto itself, so that each time you do something in your performance area, you're renewing it, not necessarily repeating it. So that practice becomes maybe its own goal in a way. The people who become masters in their performance area love practice, love rehearsal, love going back to the basics in what they do. And they love the process of practice, where they allow that special time for them to concentrate on working on one element about their performance area and proving it to themselves over and over again, building on successes and loving practices, loving rehearsals in and of themselves. Yes, the more you practice, the more you purposefully practice, the more the specific goals and plans to reach those goals and the action steps come in to greater focus with you. You have to approach each session with a plan. During your driving to the rehearsal arena, or doing your stretching, or doing your warming up, outline what you're going to practice, what you're going to rehearse on. That's your whole, breaking it down into maybe 3 parts, and then making sure at the end you give yourself the chance to allow all of that stuff to come together, knowing that practice does not make perfect. Practice in a smart way makes permanent. So as you learn how to learn, you'll learn how to retain. You're then in a position to learn how to perform the output of it. Again, when you enjoy practice in and of itself, you're fully immersing yourself into the rehearsal session. That is fun in itself. When it becomes fun, there is increased involvement and increasing learning and allowing yourself to have all those things come together. Okay. Hopefully all of this stuff makes sense about learning and about practicing. Learn how to learn how to practice, and enjoy your journeys into your performance area and into yourself.